Let me introduce our panel. I'm Judith Richards. I'm the creator of the Richards Trauma Process. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Helen Marcel, clinical psychologist in Melbourne, and also in Melbourne, Dan Zalkberg, clinical hypnotherapist and student of all things, including psychology, that are interesting. Okay. For those, I'll just give a very, very quick synopsis of what is TRTP. This webinar is not actually about what is TRTP. We're not going to go in great depth of that. If you're wanting further information on that, I suggest that you go to the website, therichards.traumaprocess.com. That's richardstraumaprocess.com, and click on what is TRTP, and you'll find more information there, and also on YouTube if you look up TRTP, the Richards Trauma Process. So a quick synopsis. The Richards Trauma Process was created out of my own ridiculous life, my own journey through extreme trauma. So I was born the youngest of 8 in a family with a few violently incestuous brothers. I was a Catholic, so I was chased around various sacristies, etc. You can use your imagination. I was stalked and drugged by a nun at 16. I attract stalkers. I worked my way up through the hierarchy of violent lunatics until I found myself with a homicidal psychopath who was into torture, and that went on for 9 years. So at the end of that time, the doctors put my body back together as best they could and said I'd be in chronic ill health and chronic pain for the rest of my very short life, probably very short life. So my body was very injured. I was very, very physically unwell. And I was also very mentally and emotionally unwell. I went through a massive PTSD breakdown with split personality, living in hallucinations, psychotic, all of those sort of things. And I decided to live, being compulsively suicidal, but only for 20 years. I decided to live. And out of that came the Richards Trauma Process. At the end of all of that, I had this process, and people saw me getting well, going from the mad bag lady to being well, and they came and they brought people to me. I did exactly what I did to get myself well with them, and they got well. And so the word spread until I was teaching it. I started teaching it 5 years ago, and we have now had over 200 graduates of the TRTP Practitioner Training Program. And it has created an extraordinary, warm, smart, capable bunch of TRTP practitioners, 2 of whom we are blessed to have with us today. And so let's just have a conversation, Dan and Helen, about, how did you find TRTP? I mean, Helen, you're a hugely experienced, educated clinical psychologist. How did you find TRTP?
What led me to it? So after years of doing lots of long-term work with various clinical presentations, I would notice that after a long time, my clients would improve, and on paper they were doing pretty well, but there was always something missing. They didn't love themselves. They were sabotaging life still. There was something missing. And so I'd come across an email in relation to TRTP, and after a while I was like, what is this? And I went along to a 3-hour talk and thought, yep, this could be the missing link. And the rest is history. So I trained 2.5 years ago, and I've just reinvigorated myself as a practitioner. It is just so pleasing to actually see people not only get well, but very quickly. And it's incredible. It's changed my life, and it's changed the lives of my clients as a result. It's fantastic.
That's fabulous. And did you have some reservations?
I guess, how could anything work so quickly? And I didn't have previous experience in hypnosis. And then but just listening to your initial conversation around it, it just made total sense.
Right. And that idea that, it sounds too good to be true, because TRTP generally resolves anxiety, depression, PTSD, and yes, Tanya Palich, it resolves crippling anxiety, panic attacks, childhood trauma, and really high levels of stress. It just does it. It does it in three sessions. The sessions are longer. They're generally an hour and a half to 2 hours, allow 2 hours. So yes, Tanya, that's...
Could I add one more thing on that? I think
Sure.
previous to TRTP, if when a client came with significant trauma or very stressful periods in their life, I knew what not to do, which was to talk long and hard about over and over again about what had happened. But I was like, oh, geez, I'm not really equipped for this. Whereas now I am eager to support clients with that, who have experienced that in the past, because this process is so safe, effective, and quick, and it's exactly what's needed for that presentation. So complete flip from my side.
Okay, so what you're saying, if I heard you correctly, is when you'd have those extreme complex trauma cases, and I mean, what do you do except talk about, the usual thing, the usual practice is to talk about it and talk about it.
Yeah.
And we know in Neuroscience 101, the more you talk about it, the more neurons come and join those neural pathways that become neural superhighways, and it embeds the trauma more. And so you were saying that with this, it's safe and it's fast.
Yes, so we don't do that.
No, we don't do that, do we, Dan?
No.
No. Rule number 1 is do not re-traumatize the client. They've been through enough.
But on that, can I just add that the neuroscience also shows us through MRIs that the area of the brain that lights up when you do narrative therapy is the area that was traumatized in the very beginning as well. So why would we want to do that with clients?
Yeah.
We can actually remap that.
Yes, indeed we can, Dan. And Fran saying it's safe and fast and long lasting. Fran, I've followed some clients for 7 years. Let's see, 2012. Yeah, 7 years. I was just counting back. In 2012, I used to specialize in violent, angry men brought against their will. The type of people who had been under house arrest by the men in their family for a couple of days and nights because they were hell-bent on going and killing the ex-partner and the new boyfriend and the children. We see it in the papers all too often. And they would come against their will. They weren't exactly compliant. They weren't motivated to change. They had a neural superhighway they were going to go and kill, and kill themselves usually as well. So they're homicidal, suicidal. And so many of those guys are still staying in touch with me. And the interesting thing about TRTP is that people continue to change for the positive. If we finish, so generally we do a DAS-21 depression, anxiety, stress score at the beginning of session 1 and at the end of session 3 and a month down the track. And so people can come, I'm thinking of one at the moment who, one of the worst PTSD cases I've ever seen. He was 21, 21, 21, the highest score on the DAS. By session 3, it was 003. By a month later, it was 000. People tend to keep going down. But what happens is we change everything in the unconscious. And so everything changes. And people's changes in behavior, the way they think, the way they feel, continues to change as time goes on. And life gets better, actually. Better and better and better. So that's our experience. How have you been with that, Dan?
I was going to say, I often say to clients that TRTP is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, that's very good. Can I use that, Dan?
You can use that too.
I like that.
And more interestingly, I think that, through the work that we do, that TRTP is not just a therapy, it's a way of life. And when you apply the constructs, when you apply the framework of what TRTP teaches you through the 3 sessions to your life, that transformation continues long going and ongoing. And that's where I've seen results with clients. There's one client that sent me a text recently. It's 2 years since I've worked with her. And she said, I can't believe the changes that I'm still making from the 3 sessions. And this was a lady that had been in therapy, had been medicated for about 10 years. So to go through that and see how happy she's been and the transformations she's made. And not only has she made her own personal transformations, but she's repaired relationships. She's changed the whole way that she looks at her world and her environment. So it's pretty amazing to see that, ongoing over years and years.
It is. And it just reminds me of a message that I received just the other day from a client I saw, I don't know, about 4 years ago. And she says, do you remember me? I've just got my phone here. She said, do you remember me? You may not remember me, but you saved my life 4 years ago on the anniversary of one of my major traumas. This girl had been left on the side of the road for dead by her boyfriend in the bush. And she'd been there for, 2.5, 3 days before she was found with horrendous injuries. And it was the anniversary of that when she was being very, very suicidal. And she came to me, and obviously she's not anymore. That was several years ago, and telling me that she now has a baby and she's married and very, very happy, and just thanking me for that. And can she come and introduce the baby to me? But you get that all the time. And this girl was just such a mess with her physical injuries as well as her emotional injuries of extreme PTSD, etc. And she was also stuck in pain. So what happens there is her body had healed, but she was in extreme crippling pain. Now I'll just explain that just for a moment, because let's just talk about what happens when we have trauma. Let's take away the word trauma and say distressing events. When we have a distressing event, we produce stress hormones. Hello, adrenaline, cortisol, etc. And what can often happen is our hippocampus, the parts of the brain responsible for memory, shut down. It's too much. They just go, no, it's too much. And instead of the event, when it passes, it being stored in memory and the door's shut, what happens is it instead gets stored in the unconscious as a videotape loop. So we've got that event and that event and that event, and they're all going on. Consciously, we're not aware of it. But when there's enough of this, when the pressure in the balloon builds up to a certain point, we blow out into anxiety, panic attacks, depression, PTSD, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, lupus, or other physical disease. Because it's just too much, something has to give. Consciously, we're not aware of why. Why do I feel like this? Why is my whole being screaming, I'm not safe? Because that's what it is with anxiety, isn't it? And if you've been through anxiety, you know, that's it. I'm not safe. The whole being screaming that. It doesn't break through into the conscious mind except in extreme PTSD. It breaks through in the form of flashbacks, relived experiences. So what does TRTP do? It closes down the videotape loops, because anxiety, it's a symptom. Depression, it's a symptom. Chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, PTSD, it's all symptoms of the same thing. The whole being screaming, I'm not safe, because these videotape loops are running in the unconscious all the time. The real issue is the trauma itself, the distressing events themselves, those videotape loops. That's the issue. The anxiety, depression, etc., OCD, they're simply a symptom. So what we do is we deal with why. We bring someone from I'm not safe to it's over and I'm safe now. We turn off those videotape loops and all the symptoms simply disappear. It's actually really simple. And Tanya says, can you self-sabotage the results by returning to old thoughts? No, it's really funny, Tanya, but the thoughts disappear. I worked with one woman with extreme dreadfulness. And she drove an hour to see me. And on the way home, when she got home, she rang me and she said, I just can't believe this. She said, all the way home, I was trying to get my old thoughts going, my old thought pattern. I was testing the process. I was trying to have the thoughts of beating myself up about what a terrible person I am, what a horrible person I am. And you know what? I'd start thinking the thought and then I just couldn't remember the rest of the thought. I just couldn't do it. So it's a funny thing, how everything just shifts. Tanya, is there anyone who is unsuitable for TRTP? Says Santosh. What do you reckon, Helen? Are there some people who are unsuitable?
Well, I think what's really very important with any treatment is to actually be on board and to be 100% have an optimistic, positive mindset.
So you're talking about the client being on board and having complete buy-in and actually engaging.
Yeah, which is the same with any treatment.
Yeah, it's a funny thing.
The mind is a very powerful thing, the
yes.
conscious mind. So it can, override things. But generally people don't want to do that because they want to be better, be well. But I guess that skeptical sort of notion. Yeah.
Yes, it's part of the cure to wish to be cured. Except, with my guys, they were quickly on board once they realised that they could be different. Dan, have you got something to say about that?
I was just going to say that, most things start with choice. Like all of you who made a choice to come onto this call today, that you've made a choice to act, and that before any change can occur, that choice has to be made, because the action of doing something and doing that choice is what people then show up for. And that translates to the client. When that client makes a choice to come and see you, but they're saying to you, yes, they're ready. They may not know how to get there, or what it feels like to be well, or even know what it knows like to be well. But we're not saying that. It's the choice of whether they want to be well. And if they can make that choice, we can take them on that journey. But it starts with that choice.
Yeah, that's correct. Thanks, Dan. You put it well. Helen.
I think one of the lovely aspects of TRTP is the preparation for example, each session leading to the hypnosis part, where there's a lot of explanation and sort of a thorough understanding is given as to why we're doing what we're doing and how it works, and then sort of getting the client to that point where TRTP is incredible. Practitioners are great, but at the end of the day, it's up to the client to be well and to make 100% commitment to the process and take 100% responsibility for their side. And I love the way TRTP does that and gets the person to a point where they, 100% on board to do the work, and then it just flows.
Yeah. Thanks, Helen. Dan.
I was just going to say that that the psychoeducation side of what we do is incredibly important. I know through growing up through my own traumas and complex history of family, a family story, that I very much built the belief that therapy doesn't work. And, through seeing, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and, being medicated, going through my own addictions, that I personally built the belief that therapy doesn't work. But I also watched, my family go through periods of times and long history of mental health clinics, where I firmly believe that no therapy was obviously helping, because it just kept going in this circle and this cycle. And so I really had to.
For how many years, Dan?
It went on for about 20 to 25 years. So for me, it was when I found TRTP, yes, the questions are, it's too good to be true. But what I found through a lot of other modalities is that you never really get the psychoeducation of why do you think the way you think? Why are you stuck where you're stuck? What is going on in your mind to make you, build your view of the world that seems like it can't change? And when we start to explain to you, like Judith said, what's going on at that unconscious level of the mind that holds and underpins that, we can actually start there to make that change. And a lot of the time, that's where the therapy begins. As soon as you connect with a practitioner, the therapy has already started.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Dan. And Dan has an extraordinary history of trauma personally. I'm just reading some of the comments there. What about people who are floridly psychotic? Asked Leslie. Hi, Leslie. That's a really good description, floridly psychotic. I can tell you that I think the worst I know of was a gorgeous woman who went to one of our practitioners, Sally Ahern, and she had been diagnosed with psychotic bipolar, type 1 at 12, and had a history, massive history of psychosis. She was now around 70 years old. I think she was 74. And of course, was on lots of medications, etc. And instead of 3 sessions, Sally broke it down very gently into 5. This woman, when she arrived with her care dog, was just in extreme panic attacks, couldn't breathe. Anyway, Sally is very gorgeously gentle and just took her gently through. And at the end of it, she had a cooked lunch for Sally and another lady who had told her about TRTP. And it was the first time she'd been able to cook lunch and have girlfriends over, first time in, 30 years or something. And she's the psychiatrist was amazed. She's now out with her little care dog in a basket, cycling along the rivers around the Sunshine Coast here in Queensland, and often to be seen. So that's it can if someone's in the middle of psychosis, of course you wouldn't do anything. You have to wait till someone is stable. Anybody, Dan or Helen, you got anything to say about in the case of experience of psychosis or history of psychosis?
I'm just mindful of what I can say as a psychologist. Yes.
Yeah.
It can be done.
Yeah. If someone's paranoid psychotic and and schizophrenic, that's another case of kettle of fish. So it just depends why the psychosis is there. If it's drug-induced psychosis and the person has a lot of brain damage from drug use, extreme drug use, well, that's something else again. But so it depends on the cause of the psychosis as to whether TRTP would work with them. It's not fairy dust. Can I just say it is not fairy dust, but we do have extraordinary results, particularly with anxiety, depression, and PTSD.
And I would just add, I guess, within the TRTP community, the practitioners have various strengths and specializations. So some TRTP practitioners work with a certain group and others will work with another. So I think that's important to add.
Yes, so we can refer on.
Yeah.
So refer to somebody who has a lot of experience and expertise in bipolar or in schizophrenia or borderline personality, for example. There are some other questions here. So it's only a person who's unwilling to go through the process. Am I right, Santosh? No, if well, it just depends. Would Dan, what would you say about that? Is it only people who are unwilling to go through the process?
I guess it's what we were just chatting about before about choice. But through the sessions and through psychoeducation and having and working with a client that's sitting there in front of you, that you can actually get someone to make that choice. So, to say that it's only for people who aren't willing to engage. Yes, if they're not going to engage in the sessions with you, if they're not going to engage in the process in the time that you're, doing the TRTP, yes, it won't work. We're drawing on the power of the imagination. We're drawing on the power of the mind to go where we need to go. And you'll find that most people who experience anxiety are actually experts in hypnosis.
Yeah, in
Right?
the imagination.
What happens when you experience anxiety? What do? You create this movie in your mind. Suddenly there's this Warner Brothers production and you are the main character. And
Yes.
what happens in that moment is that you'll find, and I know personally, that all of a sudden the body reacts to that main character. You might get a sense of something in your throat, your chest, your physical symptoms. But what is that? It's the body reacting to something that you've created in your mind. So the body what you richly imagine in your mind, your body experience is true. We don't know, the subconscious doesn't know time and space, doesn't know how old you are. It just knows what's going on for you in that moment of what's happening in the mind. And that's the power that we use from a negative to a positive. We take people from that negative experience and we show them how to use the power of the mind in a positive way.
Yes. So I think, just to make a synopsis of what Dan has said, the body in the unconscious doesn't know the difference between what we imagine and what is real. If we imagine, and do it with me, a wedge of lemon, really juicy, drippy wedge of lemon, and I'm going to stick my teeth into it and have a good suck on all that juice. And it's so sour, and there's so much juice. And my mouth has just done its thing. The saliva response, and my body has responded exactly as it would if I had a real wedge of lemon. The body and the unconscious doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. And we use that facility. Why do we use it? Because those videotape loops that I was talking about that are stored in the unconscious, well, they're not stored in the cognitive mind. If they were stored in the cognitive mind, we'd be able to just say, well, it's over, let's move on. But unfortunately, we can't move on because we're stuck in that state of fight, flight, freeze, of anxiety, of shutdown depression, whatever it is. And so it makes sense to deal with the trauma where it's stored. And where is it stored? It's not stored here in the conscious mind, it's stored in the unconscious. So we simply speak to the unconscious in the language of the unconscious. And what is that language? It's the imagination, just as in dreams. When we're in a dream state, we don't stop it. It's just, so there are pink elephants with white spots. I mean, it doesn't matter what goes on. We can fly. Anything is possible. We use theatre of the mind. We lead the client through various scenarios. And the body and the unconscious believe that it's real. And that's how we shut down those videotape loops, by bringing the person to those two places that Van der Kolk, Levine, other top trauma experts say we have to bring the person to a place of empowerment in regard to what happened, and tell the body it's over. And I go further and say, tell the body and the unconscious it's over and I'm safe now. And there's a difference. Like, if you say it with me. Let's just do an exercise. Say it from your guts and say, it's over. Say it with me. You ready? And feel what happens in your body. Observe. Ready? It's over. Good. And say it again. And observe, feel what happens in your body. It's over. And now let's just change that just a little bit. It's over and I'm safe now. Ready? It's over and I'm safe now. And let's do it again. And observe what happens in your body. It's over and I'm safe now. And you can feel the resolution. So that's what we do in TRTP. We move the person to an empowered position in regard to the dreadfulness that's happened, because otherwise the dreadfulness has the power. We move the client to having the power. And we tell them, the body and the unconscious, it's over and you're safe now. And every part of you can now return to calm. Feel it. And we watch as sometimes the Parkinson's-like tremor of extreme PTSD just simply disappears. The symptoms simply disappeared. And what does it require? It requires the client. I say to a client, I'm really good at this. I'm really good, but I can't get in your head. The richer you make your internal experience, the more profound will be your outcome. So throw everything you are into this. And we won't just return you to normal. Why the hell would we do that when this is your opportunity to create freaking extraordinary? You up for that? And that's actually what happens. It's such a privilege to engage with a client in this work. People say to me, you must be so excited seeing the changes in people. I go, well, you know what? It's not excitement for me. It's a deep, quiet, it's a humbling experience, and it's a privilege. What's your experience of it been, Helen, for you when you see change?
Oh, it's just extraordinary to just see the relief. You can see it on people's faces. You can just see that relief as they just shift, and the emotional charge is taken out of the past, and it's over. And I was just thinking as you were talking, one of my clients who had type 2 diabetes, the next day his blood sugar levels had completely changed.
It's amazing, isn't it? How the body
responding. And he's now not off all medication.
Yay! Go him! Go him!
You see people just look younger in the chair coming out of the session. It's incredible. Yeah. It's like I have years to your life.
Yeah, I have a mirror just near the chair so they can see the difference in their face.
Mm.
And yeah, it becomes addictive as a therapist. I'm just warning anybody on this call who's looking at joining us in this extraordinary world of TRTP and becoming a practitioner. It does become addictive. I remember Helen sending me an email saying, I'm very concerned that I'm developing an obsessive compulsive disorder because I can't think of anything else. It's just I think about it in my dreams, and I think about it all the time. It just becomes addictive in the best possible way. And yes, every night I'm working with clients and doing stuff in my head. Have you found that, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know that.
I sometimes wake up literally saying, I am enough. And I'm more than enough. It's like my mind is just replaying it over and over.
Yeah, it's amazing. I step out into the sun outside my office here several times a day to get some air, and the sun fills me. And everything within me goes still and quiet. And so what we're talking about here, what Helen's just mentioned and I've mentioned, is part of the process. And everyone who goes through the process comes out of it with this absolute knowing, you know what? I am enough. I'm more than enough. More than I'll ever be called upon to be. I make no apology for who I am. I'm enough. And it's pretty good. Anything to add on that, Dan?
I was just going to say, like what I was saying before, in terms of not just being a therapy, but a way of life, that it's transformed my thinking processes. You know, I step into the world now with a different view, you know, with a different clarity, with a different understanding, with a different way of being able to view life. And as I applied these concepts to myself, not only did it help me, but it helped the clients I was working with as well, to get them to see. So that's what we often talk about is, yes, it's 3 sessions, but it's ongoing. And that's why I refer to it as the gift that keeps on giving, because you're being taught tools, techniques, a way of thinking and understanding of not only who you are, but a way to view the world. And by changing that within you, you can change your whole perspective. But it's going a step further than that as well, because as you change, often people come in and we believe that all of these things that are happening to us are happening from out there and are happening to us.
Yes.
And this happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me. And it's a story. It becomes a series of stories, and it builds and builds and builds like that balloon of life. And it just fills and fills and fills and fills to the point where it feels like it's going to stop. But as we reduce that pressure in the balloon, what happens to a balloon that's only half full? I wonder if any of you ever tried to pop one.
It's unpoppable.
It's quite an interesting process. And what you find is when you go to pop it, what happens to the balloon? It becomes malleable. It stretches. And that's what we're doing.
Resilient.
Resilience. Exactly right. And so what happens for us is that as we change, the world around us has to change to accommodate the new us.
Yes.
And it's
the
a fascinating
dynamics.
process.
The dynamics of our relationships shift. Just to give people, I haven't done this on a webinar before, but I'm going to share screen. I do it on our meeting, on our video conference calls all the time, but I'm just going to show people a little bit of change. So you see me now. Let's have a before and after picture. Can you see that? Is it coming up on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Is it there?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So that was me not very many years ago. Let me see. When I was dying, that's my dog. He used to keep me warm. I used to, he'd tunnel under my head and keep me warm. I was living in fear, basically, hiding in the New South Wales bush along a 42-kilometre dead-end rock and bull dust road, so I could see anyone coming, in a tin shed with no insulation and no plumbing, no electricity. And I was terribly, I was suffering terribly from my injuries and from PTSD, etc., etc. Yeah. So here I am. It was outside a place called Glen Innes, where it used to get as cold as, the coldest night we had was -18, when there'd be more ice on the inside of the tin shed than on the outside. So why am I telling you that? Because extraordinary change is possible. So there we are, just a picture. A picture says 1,000 words, doesn't it? Is there an age restriction, Tanya? We teach you how to work with your 8-year-old daughter, and yes, some of our specialists are fabulous with kids. Dan's mum, who's a Paula, mum, is a mental health social worker, and she's brilliant with kids, brilliant with children. Will, you're a psychologist. Hi, Will. So at its core is the classical conditioning idea. It seems that the underlying process is using the imagination to disrupt the repetitive memory reconsolidation process. Memory reconsolidation process. Is that what we're doing, Dan and Helen?
Yes, through yes. The unconscious. So not just from a conscious sort of changing the thought process. We're changing the unconscious core beliefs, which are sort of underpinning our thought process.
Yes.
I think there's a couple of elements to look at that there. That, yes, you could look at it from a classical conditioning concept of, stimulus response, but it's going a step further because we're actually incorporating the idea of emotions into that as well. So it's layering. If you wanted to try and break it down into complex personality or behavioral theories, yes, you could try and fit it into a model, but the crux of it really is that we're taking the emotional charge out of the events to allow the subconscious to change what it needs to change to create a new way of being. We're opening up new neural pathways. It's tapping into a lot more of the modern neuroscience, understanding that there's neuroplasticity, understanding that the brain has the ability to change. And we're tapping into all sorts of different layers of that. So is it specific to one particular thing? No, I don't think it is.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. And the outcome is that even people who've been through the most distressing, horrific stuff, and some people, what they go through, it's but I say to a client who's been through the most horrific stuff, you'll know that you're done, because by the third session this will just be there'll be no it'll be boring. The story, the events will just be boring. They'll have as much emotional charge as reading a grocery shopping list from 5 years ago that you find in the back of a drawer. Reading that, tea, rice. It's not a lot of charge there. It'll be the same. It'll just be so boring. So that's the outcome. And the person is so empowered and within themselves, so rich, their experience of self shifts so much that their experience of self becomes so rich and so empowered. It's like they go from experiencing themselves as a storm at sea, and people look down on the big waves and look at that, and go, wow, that's the ocean. Well, that's not the ocean. It's a storm on a part of the ocean. And that's how a lot of us experience ourselves and our whole life sometimes. And what happens is we shift people from experiencing themselves as a storm on the ocean to experiencing themselves as the ocean itself. Because the ocean is not just that storm. It covers 2/3 of the planet. It's deep and vast and rich. And our experience of self goes from that storm to the ocean itself. And once you experience yourself as that, once you know the truth of who you really are in that, we have a word, embiggened space, you can't go back. It's not something that you can unknow, and things change. Anything to add on that, Helen?
No, I think that's it in a nutshell. I couldn't say it better myself.
Okay. Dan, anything to add on that? So
I think you summed it up with the ocean, Jude.
it's the whole, but isn't it the whole experience of self?
Yeah.
Is
both internally and externally. I think that's the important thing to add, is that we're working with both.
Yeah. And what happens is the dynamics around us shift.
Yeah.
The dynamics of relationships. I had one woman who was not terribly self-aware, and because it happens on such an unconscious, fundamental level, sometimes people don't really feel very different. Some people who are not terribly self-aware say, "Well, I don't know, but everyone's changed." She came to me suicidal, and she was about to get a divorce from her husband, and all sorts of problems. And she said, "My husband's changed. We're not getting a lot of sleep, if you know what I mean. He's just a different man. And my boss has changed. The girls at work, they're no longer bitches. I've become the agony aunt. They take me out to dinner. I don't know what's happened, but everybody seems to have changed," which is often the way. The calm in the storm of life. Yes, Sheila. And the thing is that the storms change. Have you noticed any difference in people suffering from narcissistic personality disorder? Well, it's a funny thing. Would you like to say something about that, Helen? I don't see many narcissists.
Well, I was just going to say,
they don't come.
They don't.
Because it's not their fault. They don't have a problem. It's the other people. They have the problem. Would you agree with that?
I don't see a lot of people with narcissism in my practice, and nor TRTP. That said, there was perhaps one or two that were open to the idea, and they did TRTP, and they had a great outcome. So,
fabulous. Well, there you go. Yes, because often narcissists don't accept that they have a problem. But some have. Well, that's great, Helen. I'm really pleased to hear that.
I think they often come for different reasons, and so yeah.
Yes. Okay. Can you work with clients online, Sheila, with your therapy, or only face to face? Sheila, it's just as effective online as it is face to face. We use Zoom, video conferencing generally, just because it's more reliable than Skype. And Helen, have you done online?
I tend to choose face to face for a number of reasons.
That's your practice.
In terms of rebates, also.
Yeah, of course.
People are not able to get a rebate online.
That's right. So, Dan, what about you?
I do a lot of work online, actually. I do
Is
a
that
lot of
so?
traveling. Yeah, I do a lot of traveling at
Yes.
times, and
That
tend
is
to
for
meet
sure.
people
On chairlifts in Canada,
in all sorts of places, and
on planes.
yeah. So for me, it's an opportunity to spread this work globally, and as we'd like to be able to do with more and more people, and obviously share this amazing work out there. But I find it's just as, if not more effective, because if you've got a set of headphones, I'm in your head. I'm in there. And I have wonderful results online. I'm currently working with a number of people in Canada, a number of people through United States, through Amsterdam, Israel, all through Europe. So it's definitely a wonderful experience to be able to share that. And even with people in other languages, providing obviously that they can speak English and understand me, it's amazing what they do. I was working with a Dutch guy with very severe OCD, and he would translate a lot of what I was saying back into Dutch in his mind, and we had a fabulous result. So it's pretty remarkable stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I prefer online myself because of that thing getting in the head. My furthest away client was Azerbaijan. I had to look it up. It's near Turkey. But yes, so the short answer
is yes.
Sheila, is yes. Yes. As you can see, we take all this terribly seriously, and we never smile or laugh. And that's the thing about the extraordinary practitioner community at the back end of this. It tends to be made up of early adopters are very smart and very fabulous people, and we are surrounded by them in this work, and we do have a lot of fun, which is great. What about clients with DID? Fran, is that Fran? I'm just trying to see here. Fran. Anyway, it just says Fra here. And what about clients with DID? Yes. In a word, yes. We work with the different personalities separately. Don't do this at home. Don't do this at home. I had a psychiatrist ring me a while back. He said, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I work at such and such psych hospital in Melbourne. I run the trauma unit. I'm a PTSD expert. I'm published. I'm a name. I'm known. I'm supposed to be an expert. And I've been working with this one man every fortnight for 9 years with complex PTSD, getting nowhere. I hospitalize him a lot to keep him alive. And I've just seen this man. That's why I'm calling you. And he's walked in completely well. I've just witnessed a miracle. In the 2 weeks since I last saw him, he saw one of your people had your 3 sessions. So this is impossible. It can't happen, but I've just seen it. I obviously don't know what I'm doing, but I better come and learn. But for his second client, he rang me and he said, can you step me through what to do with the DID who's in the hospital at the moment? I said, I certainly can. Go and do about 50 anxieties and depressions, work your way up to PTSD, and eventually I will show you how to do DID. It's not something that you just leap into. But yes, for those who are experienced, we have had some people with DID become very, very functional. How close can each session be? We normally have them weekly, Fran, but they can be about 4 days. 4 days about the closest, so that people can integrate. Kim Malone, what professional background are you from, Judith? Well, Kim, I'm perfectly suited to this work. My first degree was from the Conservatoire of Music. I'm a classical pianist. So, moving right along from that one. But I teach psychiatrists, psychologists, people, GPs, anaesthetists. We're going to do another webinar interview in a couple of weeks about pain. Dr. Dinah Hasty will be one of the panelists there. She's an anaesthetist who has had a number of years specialising in pain. So that's one to look out for. Will this be recorded to watch again? Yes, Tanya, it will. So we're about out of questions. Helen, do you have anything that we haven't covered, or Dan? What about the training? How did you find the training? In fact, Dan and Helen are on the teaching team. They are on the team that mentors new students coming into the training. How did you find your own training?
One of the amazing things as a practitioner is to do this training and the follow on and the community support and the training that goes on once you do the workshop. So often I've trained in some amazing training over the years, but then you sort of, after those 3 days, you go back and work with clients and think, oh, I'm not sure what to do now, and you go back to your own ways. Whereas TRTP is not like that. It is a full-on 6-month commitment of training, and there's this a very powerful, knowledgeable community just waiting to support each other. And that's as a practitioner, that's one of the greatest gifts of this, apart from the fact that it's so effective, is the support and the ongoing training. And it's essential.
Yeah. Thanks, Helen. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, I've done a lot of courses for 4 or 5 years. I studied every course I could get my hands on the weekends, and every therapy technique that I could find in search of, as I was saying before, this idea in my head that therapy didn't work. So a lot of it was about trying to pull out the bits of all the different therapy modalities that I was trying to go, oh, that bit looks like it works. Or, would work with a client for a period of time and go, well, this seems to work, but was never really getting long lasting results. And so it was finally when I came across TRTP and really going through the training and having TRTP as a client first, which we do through the training. You experience TRTP for yourself for 2 reasons. One is to get rid of your own shit, but also to experience what it's like to be that client and to know the power of this work. And having done that and with the mentors at the time was the most empowering and enriching experience for me and transformative. And when, going then into the 3-day intensive, I was like, this stuff works.
Yeah.
And then as Helen said, the ongoing support that comes from that is nothing like I've ever experienced with the training, and the knowledge that we get from you, and the experience that you bring, and the knowledge that you bring on a weekly basis, and including the other 200 plus practitioners that all bring some of the most incredible experience and knowledge and wisdom. It's been completely invaluable for me and my learning and my growth. So I'm very blessed to feel a part of this community now.
Yes.
And just to add one thing to that, I think because there is a broad spectrum of practitioners, they come from different professional backgrounds, that's also enriching. So it's not the same group of professionals sort of with the same ideas. And so the learning experience from others is incredible.
Cross-pollination.
And it's, there's a huge range of practitioners from, GPs, clinical psychiatrists, right through, to answer Santos's question of body workers and energy workers. So can people be effective, in this work? Absolutely. Life experience can be effective. It's amazing that when you step up and you have that empathy and compassion to share, what transformation truly is, that we can do this work in a really wholehearted way.
And it's interesting that with that great mix of people, that in the practitioner community, it's egos left at the door and everyone's on the same level. Everybody helps each other so generously and so warmly. And we have a video conference call each week where we meet together and work together, and there's ongoing professional development. There's an online forum that's accessible 7 days a week. If you've got a tricky case, you put it up there and people come and help. Is there evidence-based research at this stage? Kim, we have our own research team, people like Dr. Jennifer Rice, who taught psychology research design at Melbourne University for 15 years. That we have our own team putting together the research. We've been teaching this for 5 years. It takes a while to get through ethics committees, etc. So yes, that's coming. And so we're, in terms of the training, we have an intake in August. It's a 8-week, fairly intensive program. It is still part-time. There's a 3-day workshop included in that, which is the face-to-face. And And we have that in August and in September. The 3-day workshop is in mid-August, and the other one is on the 4th to the 6th of October. There is a tsunami of pain out there. There is so much pain. There is our suicide rate continues to climb. Within my own family, there have been 3 suicides over the years. Yes, Uja, there are professional development points available for the training. That's up to you to organise as your thing. Yes, but everyone who comes organises to get points from that. And so what we're doing, can I just say, this is my big thing. This is why I do what I do. What we're doing is not fast enough, it's not effective enough, and people are dying. We work with people with suicidal ideation and step them through in just a couple of hours. They're not suicidal anymore. Just the other day, I worked with an 18-year-old young woman who had tried to hang herself 3 times in the previous 12 months. She's fabulous now. We have to do something different, and this is different. It's fast, it's effective, it's long-lasting, and yes, it is new. The research is not in yet on it. It's not in. We have an audit that will be released fairly soon on our results with DASs. There are a number of things going on in the background. And if we wait, people will die. If you are compelled to have better results with your clients, if you're compelled to do better, to be more of a force for good in the world, come and join us. At least look at it. Because what we're doing is not working, people. Too many people are dying. There is so much pain. And what happens with this, you work with one member of one family and it shifts things. And then, that girl that I said about who'd been left in the bush, I said to her mum, how did you find me? Because this was in the early days. And she said, well, you worked with Aunt Jane and Uncle Tom and Cousin. I had done about 13 people in that extended family that I'd worked with. That whole family is a completely different organism now. So what am I saying? We're taking enrolments at the moment. If this interests you at all, go to the richardstraumaprocess.com. I know, take a packed lunch to type that in, but THE, Richards Trauma Process.com, and make an appointment. You'll see where to make an appointment for a Q&A session. And let's have a conversation. Because we need to change the world. Just because we can. Our small end point is to change how mental health is done. And we're going to do it. Because it needs to be changed. There's too much pain, too many people dying. So I'll stop my rave now. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Helen Marcel.
Thanks
Great
for having
to have you here. And I just want to explain
great.
why Carol Buchanan is not here. We had a technical glitch and she couldn't get onto the call. So Carol, if you're watching, we'll see you next time. And for those who are waiting to see Carol, and from a nurse's perspective, sorry, but we couldn't get her on the call. So next time. And Dan, thank you very much for joining us.
Can I add one thing?
Helen.
The number of calls that I'm getting now specifically for TRTP shows that it is just expanding exponentially. Daily calls for TRTP, and that's very exciting.
People seeking you out specifically for TRTP.
And that's very exciting.
Yes,
so we are going to make change.
We certainly are. We already are. Thank you, Helen, for joining us on this TRTP journey. And Dan, thank you, everyone. Tanya, Kim, Sheila, Santosh, I'll be in touch. We better go. We're over the hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.